officially open the meeting of the planning board of the town of Wenham. It's a special meeting to work through the subdivision rules and regs. So not our normal night, but it's Wednesday, April 22nd, 2026 at 6 p.m. In the room here are Margaret. I want to say Young, and the reason I want to say Young is because my very first administrator was Margaret Young. No, Margaret Hoffman, town planner, myself, Ann Weeks, and our new member, Marcus Wright. Online, we have David Anderson, Scott Schoenberger, and then representatives from the Innis Land Strategies Group to work with us tonight. The meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be on file at the town hall and on the website.
They can get it from my office if they
Get
need
it from the town planner's office.
Copy.
So our one agenda item at the outset is to walk through this new draft of the subdivision rules and regs that's been put together by Innis with input from, I think, the board and from our planning staff. And anyone else look at this so far, or has it just been the planning staff?
It's
Board of Health,
mostly been
anybody?
planning. I haven't had too many comments from other departments. The building inspector has looked at it. He made a few comments at the first round, so they do have those. Supriya, I think we heard from Board of Health. Greg did send some.
Great.
Yeah, so Supriya has most of those. I'm gonna stop share. Oh, am I sharing? Can you guys see? You can't see anything on there. Okay. That's fine. All right. If Supriya, is there anything you want me to bring up, or do you want to do it?
I can share my screen. We just want to run through the status of where we are and what's next. So I have a very short presentation for that.
Okay, great. And then I went through this draft and made some comments and had some thoughts, and I don't know how you want to handle that conversation, and I don't know if other members have done the same.
I hadn't received anything from anyone but you, Ann,
Okay.
for comments.
Well, some of the things I noticed are not worth having a conversation about because they're just missing words and the like, but some things are sort of policy questions that I think it would be useful at least to raise tonight and start having a conversation about. So
I do acknowledge the typos, because between the transition from the PDF to the Word, every time we look at the document, we are coming up with something that slipped in the transition. But the point of this draft is to make sure that every department and the planning board and the town staff had an opportunity to look at it, so we can kind of wrap it up and have a complete, proper final draft for the town. So I'm just going to quickly go through this. I'm also joined by Sam. And Sam, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. My name's Sam Forg. I work with Expedited Engineering. I'm a principal here, and I'm helping as partially like a technical advisor for Innis.
Great.
Thank you. So we are at the kind of the final task 5, which is preparing the final draft and also looking for public approval and comments. I'm just going to walk through what did the first draft include, what does the second draft include, and what we are still missing on town confirmation. And there are certain things that need a little bit of policy directions and what we are going to do next. So the first draft we submitted was on December 23rd. And what this did was firstly transfer everything into a workable Word document, but also have a discussion with a lot of stakeholders and the planning board of what sections are missing and how to modernize this. So we added on to the existing subdivision regs more than taking out and doing heavy reorganizations, but also flag sections that were inconsistent or duplicative that would need further review. The next draft we submitted on February 27th, and this one tried to take a look at the very heavy legal language and simplified it into normal English so that the reader, it's more comfortable for the reader. We also tried to streamline and clarify a lot of submission requirements and make it more simple. There were 2 chapters of design and construction standards that were 2 different chapters that felt a lot redundant, or someone had to go back and forth to look at the design and construction standards for the same topic. So we consolidated that into 1 chapter. We also reviewed all the timelines and deadlines to make sure that they are consistent. And we also had a long discussion with the town about how many street types are necessary and what exists right now. And this is something that, which is why Sam is here today, that was a discussion that the town felt like we need to have with the planning board as well. So Sam, I'm going to hand it to you.
Yeah, sure. I think the original draft had 5 different street classifications, and we've now culled it down to 4. I think it makes sense just in terms of where the responsibility for maintenance lies. I think with arterial, collector, and local streets, it makes sense that the DPW would be set to maintain those. The 4th classification is the minor street and common driveway, which is classified and discussed in the definitions as a private street. And therefore, I don't think would need to be managed by DPW. I think that this just ultimately reduces, some ambiguity as to what I think it was a modified local was the 5th classification that we got rid of. And it's just again, it reduces and provides a little bit more clarity for designers as to what the road is or street is intended to be.
So Sam, how do you guys want questions on topics? Do you want us to wait till the end of the presentation, or do you want us to ask them as they arise?
I can just pause and we can.
Yeah, I was just going to say personally, I'm happy to
Yeah.
to kind of talk through whatever questions you may have at the time.
Yeah, in the definitions, you've got descriptions of heavy volume and substantial volume. And for a town like Wenham, what do those terms mean? I'm just wondering how we would think about that if we were looking at a plan.
Yeah, I was because a lot of the current language kind of allows for the planning board's discretion to define the street. And I think that part of some sort of preliminary process or initial conversation with the town should clarify that. Supriya, you and I haven't touched on this, but as I was kind of prepping for this meeting, that was another thing that I was considering is doing some sort of understanding of what volume would classify for each and have that set in the definition. I don't know if that's answering your question directly, but I think that if you're setting a trip generation number expectation within the definition, I think that removes additional ambiguity from it.
It would remove ambiguity. I'm not sure how you would go about figuring it out, and I wasn't sure if you already had something in mind, if there was some definition somewhere in the statute or in the design manuals that could sort of enlighten us about this a little bit.
Yeah, I think what I would I haven't looked at it yet, but usually DOT would have something of that. And certainly could be something that I can discuss with DOT if they have kind of a standard for volume on each of those roads.
That'd be helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's probably going to be obvious, but just because we have that language in there, it'd be useful to have some framing of what it is intended to mean.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, could I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I have a question about the minor street definition. We do have in there that it's any private street access to 3 or less lots, each of which has frontage and at least twice the minimum area required by the zoning bylaw. Is that something we want to maintain, that these lots have to be 80,000 square feet in order to be a minor road?
I mean, that's a
Anyone have
policy
thoughts?
question that we should have a
Mm.
conversation about as a board, I think.
I think, is that something that we can determine, you can determine as a board, make that choice? Priya, do you think that's something that the board has the authority to change?
I mean, it needs to be consistent with the zoning bylaw.
Yeah, this just refers to twice what the zoning bylaw, whatever
Yeah.
the zoning bylaw is.
Yeah.
So, you know, our zoning bylaw right now is 40,000, so. I'm just thinking, we do have some small subdivisions, right? We've had the 2 and 3 lot subdivisions, but they're these huge lots. Is it something that the board wants to think about, that perhaps we could reduce that to say, you know, just leave them at 40,000, you could have a 3 lot subdivision with 40,000 square feet? I don't know. David, I don't know if you had any thoughts on that one. Talking about smaller lot sizes.
Do we want minor streets with? Because the other part of a minor street, it can be built to less exacting standards, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And then it's a private street though, minor streets have to remain private. That's something that we do now, you know, for the smaller lots, like on Maple Street and Lily Lane. They have to remain private because they're minor streets.
Understood.
I think what we end up with on these though is those great big cul-de-sacs at the end. Because they are such huge lots.
I think just personally going towards smaller lots would achieve a lot of the things we've been talking about generally as a town.
Do we want private streets on them though? Doesn't aid affordability if you have to pay to maintain your street.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see a lot of incentive to having smaller lots sizes for big scale subdivisions. I mean, I don't see the advantage of cramming more houses onto a development like Spring Hill. I see a lot of advantages to having different lot size requirements for certain areas of town. But I think in the subdivision rules and regs, which are targeting the larger scale developments, generally, like if you think about, can we talk about specific developments in the past that are closed? I don't see any reason why not, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, like Lily Lane. So if we drop this to 50,000, in theory, they could have crammed 3 houses back there instead of 2. Is that better or worse for us as a town? I don't know that they're going to do more affordable housing, smaller housing sizes. I think they're just going to be more crammed on the lots. That's how the developers make money. So I'm skeptical that this is the vehicle that we would use to do housing density in Wenham in the areas that we think it's advantageous.
Right, and it might, and basically you're sort of doing it back end wise through the minor street requirement.
I think I'm more suggesting that instead of 80,000 square feet, a 40,000 square foot lot could suffice even on a minor street.
Although the whole point that is a minor street is gonna be less exacting, the standards are not gonna
Yes.
be as exacting. And if the more lots you have on it, the more
Well,
traffic it will
It
have,
can only be
maybe.
3, it can't be more than 3 lots. It's 3, minor streets are 3
Oh,
or
right,
less.
right, actual access to 3 or fewer lots.
Yeah, to just 3 or fewer. It was just a thought, I didn't, because I know we've had some of these, they come in and they have 80, it's an 80,000 square foot lot, it seems. With one house, so they end up having to be the $2 million homes. But
So you're saying that this twice the minimum area required is built from the old
yes,
rules?
it is, yeah. It's left over from the old rules. I'm just thinking maybe on the minor street, if they were allowed to use 40,000 square feet, only 3 lots or less though. They can't use a minor street for 4 houses. If there's 4 houses or up, they have to go to a better constructed roadway.
Constructed road. I mean, if the parcel is big enough to handle 80,000 square foot lots. They'll handle 80,000 square foot lots, you know, if that's what they want to do. If
Right,
that parcel is big enough to handle more, they'll go to a different
Yeah.
design.
well, I think like we were talking about.
It's not gonna,
Lily
it's
Lane.
not gonna change their decision, I don't think.
But say Lily Lane, say they could have done 3 houses there, they would have been on at least 40,000 square foot lots. It would just be they would have gotten an extra house in there, but only 3, whereas they could only do 2 because they needed 80,000 square.
I think without,
So-
I think without design standards to sort of create incentives for smaller houses on the smaller lots as opposed to tall houses
Yeah.
that aren't in character with the neighborhood. I'm not sure that the plan works, the idea works. I don't know if that's what you were saying, David,
I think so.
the
And
scale of it.
yeah, this may not, Margaret makes a good point. So this may not be the right place. I've always just since I've been watching this stuff, I'm always just concerned about squeezing stuff into spaces that aren't squeezing stuff into spaces that do not benefit from being squeezed. And
Infill that's not at scale, is that what you're?
infill that's not at scale, infill that's not intentional by the town. We're not, we've gone kind of block by block and area by area through the town. We know where it would be cool to get some more density. And we know the areas that but like like if you think about Lily Lane, that would have been an awesome place to have had 5 small capes. It could have created a really nice micro community, micro neighborhood. Now, I get it. That's not going to work for the current private street, minor road language because you can only have 3 lots. Instead, we got 2 large houses. I don't know that allowing a 3rd large house there would have been what we wanted.
Okay,
But I think I'm talking about maybe something different than what we're trying to do tonight. So I want to be careful not to derail this or spin us down a wormhole.
yeah, it's something we can always discuss a little more later.
I had a question in the open spaces section.
Do we want to let Ines continue through their presentation, and when we get to the open space section, can you hold your comment there?
Oh, yeah, that's fine. I wasn't sure how we were walking through it.
Yeah, that was my question too, and it sounds like if we're in the topical area, we should ask the question and then continue through and wait till we get to that topical area. So if you have one, just hold it. Does that sound right, Supriya?
We probably don't have anything about open spaces in the slides, so if we can just discuss that right now, and that's okay.
Okay, Scott?
Oh, thanks. There was in 4.9.1, there was a term improper cases in relation to whether or not there would be a park in a subdivision, and I wasn't sure what improper cases meant in the context, and also why we wouldn't go or couldn't have a policy that's more, once you're above a certain size, we require a certain amount of open space?
We can cross check that with the zoning and see what the zoning says, and then make sure that's reflected there. If there's a percentage in the zoning, and Margaret, you can correct me on that, and make sure that that's reflected.
I think there is a requirement, isn't there, in the
subdivision regulations?
no, in the zoning ordinance, if you have a certain kinds of development do require open space.
Mhm.
Or would that
Well, we
be,
used to have an open space, what was called an ROSD, residential open space development bylaw. It was part of the subdivision bylaw, but we don't have that anymore.
okay,
We have flexible development, which does require open space.
but that's
but that's a
site plan
different animal,
review,
yeah,
that's
that-
not a
yeah,
subdivision.
It's
Okay.
not really the same as subdivision. It's a
So-
special permit process.
So there's a policy question for the board, do we want to try to add that here?
We could, I think when the subdivision bylaw was written, there was a lot of opportunity for large subdivisions to be built, with multiple homes. And I think back then, everyone thought, well, let's put a playground make sure they have a playground in here for the kids. And I think that was where that idea came from. Not sure it was necessarily just open space, but I think we can certainly have that somewhere. I don't know, we could allow for more density, I don't think you can
Well, I mean,
in
what-
subdivision.
What this says, it says that the park or parks shall be at least equal to 1 acre of land for each 20 dwelling units.
Yeah, so that was for
Or
20.
10% of the land area. And this is for large developments, obviously.
I don't know that we'll be getting a subdivision that large anytime.
Well, we
Do you see anywhere that we could do that?
did just get,
I think the issue in that point is the term proper cases, and
Yeah,
we
exactly.
can do is just cross-check that with zoning if there's a proper case scenario, or remove that language, because otherwise it's just subjective of what proper case can mean.
I think that's
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
I think if you just take the phrase improper cases out,
Yeah.
that allows the board to require a plan. Because it says may also, it doesn't say that we
Yeah.
have to. Okay.
If there aren't any further questions, I can move on to the next slide.
Sure. I mean,
So there are a few items that we still need the town's input on. So on March 11th, we received the town's comment on the draft 2. We're still waiting on further comments from different departments. The forms and application forms will be confirmed by the town council. We have a section about inspection and supervision that needs to be reviewed by the DPW, because we want to make sure that what we are adding is exactly what actually happens on ground. So that's something that's pending confirmation. There is some language that the town has asked us to incorporate in the A&R plans that we'll add in. We had written complete street design objectives, but since the town hasn't yet adopted a complete street policy, we are going to take that entire section out. And once there is a formally adopted policy, that can be added into it. Again, there are certain definitions that the town and the Conservation Commission is going to clarify for us. And if the board is okay with the 4 street types, this is the point where we'll actually have technical diagrams and cross sections for it in the next draft.
great. Do you want comments on any of this now? One
Yes.
of the things, I could just run through the comments, the sort of major ones
Mhm.
that I saw when I was looking at the draft. If that works for you.
Yes.
The first sort of substantive thing is, are we asking for underground electric utilities in all new subdivisions? I think we are.
Yep.
There are some places in the draft where it refers to poles and
Yes.
wires and overhead types of stuff that I wonder if you could just do a close read to confirm that, because it's a little bit ambiguous what we intend. It doesn't actually say anywhere, and I don't know if that's because it says in some other town bylaw that that's what we're aiming at, but we should, if it's not stated, you know, positively somewhere, it probably ought to be. And
We can add that in the utilities section so that the intent is clear, and then I'll cross-check for consistency.
yeah, I flagged a couple places in that written comment document that I gave Margaret, so. On page 5 in section 1.2A, which I don't remember the title of it, but I'll look. It's in the purpose section. It talks about environmentally sustainable and resilient subdivision design, including water conservation and modern stormwater practices, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't say anything about, you know, encouraging or promoting renewable energy use in building siting or anything like that. I don't know if that's within the scope of something we can add here, but I think it would be consistent with our master plan to have language like that.
We can definitely add that.
If you're thinking about the configuration of lots, just to keep in mind how a building would have to be positioned to use renewables like that. So that was one. There's a definition of irrigation system on page 7 that it seems to inject kind of a normative requirement into a definition, which I think is not the smartest way of doing it. I think it should be stated somewhere that we're not permitting irrigation systems that somewhere beside the definition of irrigation system. You know what I mean? Do we have, is there a town bylaw at this point that says no irrigation systems in?
There's no bylaw that requires that. It's in the water department's regulations, though.
A prohibition on
Yeah, a
new
prohibition
systems?
on irrigation
So
systems.
can we
Yeah.
cross-reference that somewhere here?
Yeah. I think
Under
we do.
utilities maybe, or I don't know where you would put it, streets, utilities. Sidewalks, I don't
Actually, it
know.
says under irrigation system,
It's the definition though.
in the definition, ornamental landscape irrigation are prohibited in new subdivisions.
Right, and I'm saying you don't
Except as-
put a normative
I see.
provision like that in the definition.
Okay.
You would put it somewhere else in a requirement. That was my flag.
Okay.
I don't know, the other attorney on the online might disagree with that, but that was my reading.
Mhm.
I defer to you on, I
It-
assume you were the ghost writer for Strunk and White or the Blue Book.
Yeah, except they didn't say anything about this, but whatever. I've already asked the heavy volume of traffic versus substantial question. On page 12 in section 2.4, sorry, I'm making you do this, but as long as we're all here together, whoops, this is upside down. Where's page 2? Where is it? Anyway, it's on page 2.4 and I'm not finding it here. Here it is, that's why in front of me. More than one building for dwelling purposes on a lot. This might get to your question.
Mhm.
Also, we've got, if you wanna,
One building.
you can't do more than one building, per 40,000 square feet exclusive of land and floodplain. Do we really want to be that prescriptive here, or do we want to say that it's, consistent with the zoning bylaw?
Yeah, no, I
instead
agree
of-
with that. Yeah, consistent with the zoning bylaw.
So instead of saying such consent shall be limited to one unit per 40,000 square feet, it should say such consent shall be limited to the acreage as required in the zoning bylaw for the district in which the subdivision is located, or some language like that.
Yep.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Yeah, not keep that 40,000 square feet in case it changes.
and shouldn't it
Right.
reference not CMR, but our bylaws?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
No, because the accessory dwelling units is CMR. You could do the bylaws too, you know?
It is in our bylaw now. It's in our zoning bylaw now, so.
Our bylaws are slightly different than
Right.
CMR, would be my
Yeah.
guess. We want to capture that.
Okay, so that's another change to that paragraph.
Okay.
With that. All of these are written down, I'm just. We
Yes,
can't.
Margaret,
because the
Margaret
open meeting-
forwarded.
Yeah, because of the open meeting law, I can't send it around to the board. We have to have a conversation. I'm sure you understand that.
Yes.
I can send them to them tonight, though, after the meeting, I'll send them your comments.
Right, I'm just gonna go through and explain them if I can, since we're all here. In section 2.8, criteria for board action, I think it would be very wise to expressly cross-reference the town master plan then in place as one of the priorities for boards to evaluate and coming to a decision.
Mhm. Okay.
On page 17, in section 3.2.2J, and then again, on page 18, in section 3.2.3S, there's this reference to topography and providing information about topography on the site in a general manner. I don't know what that means. Does it mean, existing and proposed with 10-foot contours? It would seem to me that in the preliminary plan, we would want some feel of the proposed grade changes of volumes to be moved or pushed around, even if it's preliminary plan.
So Margaret also flagged that in her comment, so that's something that we look into. And also Sam had a comment about how much to include in the preliminary plans, and that's coming from the other side who actually looked at the subdivision rules and regs. So Sam, if you want to talk about topography at all.
Yeah, sure. The advances in GIS topography and using of Mass Mapper, it gives a pretty good understanding as to what the topo of a site currently is already. So I think having general characteristics of topography is kind of hinting at that in using GIS topography from a preliminary perspective before anybody dives into full design. My commentary was was probably stemmed from another process that I'm currently in relative to a subdivision in which a preliminary process has essentially required that I design the full set of site documents at a preliminary stage. And in my view, the preliminary process it should be in place more from a discussion perspective. Should have a general feel as to what the preferred layout would be for the client. Have some understanding of general topography changes and kind of what the approach would be, but doesn't really get into the nuances of here's my stormwater calculations, here's where all of my utility runs are, everything of that nature, because it's time for one from I obviously work with a lot of developers and time is usually of the essence. And so that's kind of coming from that angle. I do certainly think that it could be put in there that you should have a narrative attached from an approach perspective.
Yeah.
But again, I also use preliminary processes in terms of neighborhood engagement. If there's not another vehicle in town, proposing subdivisions in land areas that are, highly sought after or valuable to the neighborhood in general. I found that it's a good vehicle to initiate those conversations with different folks that are, the interested parties that they can weigh in, during that preliminary process and really try to, put their thumb on what the end result is from a design perspective.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that, but that's my kind of obscures my question because I'm just wondering if you're saying that in a general manner means use GIS topography, why wouldn't we say that? Or some similar,
We can specify that, and that's the general
Very
manner
vague.
form is also, yes, what Margaret flagged, that we need to be specific.
Right, so if we could just decide what that means, and then it's completely redundant because we have subdivision, we have the preliminary plan requirements, and in J on, page 17, 2J says the topography of the land in a general manner, and then you flip the page over, additional subdivision submission requirements, you have S, which says the existing and proposed topography in a general manner. And so I think the question is, which one are we asking for? And is it a standard part of the submission? And not an additional submission? It seems like the language of S should go into J, and we should be specific a little bit more specific about what we mean by in a general manner. That was my comment.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you on the preliminary doesn't need to be a final. The preliminary needs to be enough so we know what's going to happen, and we can give you or the developer a sense of, gosh, that seems like a lot for that piece of property.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that was my questionnaire. The next one that's got any substance to it is in the definitive subdivision. It's basically the same thing on page 20, subsection M, line 630 to 635. There's a requirement to submit a topographic plan showing existing and new. Can we ask for that on a separate sheet and have it include the lot lines so that we can see one of the things that I've found when I've looked at some of the submissions here is everything is crammed onto one sheet, and it's really hard to discern what is what. But if you could see the lots on top of the topography, it would be super helpful.
Okay.
Does that seem
Yeah,
like
that seems
something you
reasonable.
would value?
Yes,
As
yeah,
staff?
oh, yeah, definitely.
Just to comment on that too, I think that from a design perspective, having a specific checklist of those sorts of things that the town would like is incredibly helpful.
Okay, good.
So that's certainly something that I've talked about with Innes and could be brought in as part of this as well.
Yeah, even didn't review the forms. Presumably the forms have a checklist, do they?
Do the forms have a checklist?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
you should probably,
The forms don't have a checklist, but we had discussed with Margaret because the language, some of the language needs to be retained in the preliminary plan and the definitive plan, and it's quite lengthy. So our discussion was that Ines can create a handout that just shows the timelines of what's due when and the process timelines, as well as a checklist for all the
that would be
plans.
super helpful.
So, yeah.
The next one I have is on page 21, section 3, the tree plan. And I don't know if this is the way it's written now. I'm embarrassed to say, but is the burden now on the tree warden to submit the plan and not the applicant?
No, I don't think it's ever been that.
Okay, but it's written that way now, and so.
Is it?
Well, in this draft, it seems to be. Maybe I've misread it. No?
No,
Oh, the tree-
Margaret has that. Margaret, you have already flagged that, and we have changed that's not going to be on the tree warden.
So,
Okay.
yeah, that would have to come from the applicant, not our tree board.
And the tree warden gets an opportunity to review it.
Yes.
Right? And is that
Yes.
gonna be written into here too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
okay,
tree
cool.
warden will be part of the review for all of the applications, yeah.
Great, but I mean, specifically with the tree plan, he should be reviewing and saying yes or no. Yeah, so it should say that, I think.
Okay.
One of the earliest discussions that we had with all the stakeholders was that they would like a copy of the plan and certain duration and I think that's specified somewhere. If not, I can cross-check, and a specific window of time to come back with their comments. So that I think includes the tree warden too.
Okay, well, I'm sure we'll get to see the next draft, right? So. I only have a couple more. And that I flagged as sort of policy questions or, unclear what the intent is, and that is, so the next one's on page 29. There's what is it, page 29, section B1? I'm actually might be on the wrong page. Yeah, it is. Where's 29? Here we go, sorry, it's B1 line 987 on page 29. It talks about releasing the performance guarantee, and it refers to pavement integrity intact after 18 months. We have sidewalks there, it's not just the roads, but also the sidewalks, pavement integrity. Is that,
That's a good point.
can we do that? So it says pavement integrity, blah, 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 of completion of all roads and sidewalks within the development. And I guess we could do it that way, or we could say road and sidewalk pavement integrity intact after 18 months, or however you want to do it, but just to add sidewalks there. Go ahead. Does someone else have something?
No, I don't think so.
No? This is stupid, but on page 28, line 986, 978, sorry. There's a reference to a penal sum. Can we change that language? It seems kind of archaic. It's in the performance bond information. 15A, reduction of bond surety, maybe that's something from
yeah.
the statute, or is
I
that,
think that's from the old one.
it's,
The Supreme, I think that's from our old one, isn't it?
it has to be, it's
I
such.
I'll check. I can double check that
If Dan were here, he would know whether or not that's just something that is a term of art that they use, but it just seems like the wrong word. Anyway, that's my dumb thing there. On page 29 in section BV, back on that, B5, little Roman 5. There's functional integrity of all parts of the drainage systems. Do we want to call out stormwater as well? Drainage and stormwater systems? We had that one performance bond in the subdivision that will remain unnamed, that gave us heartache because we weren't sure if it was functioning. Remember that? And there was a street acceptance question and so on and so forth, and
I
I
think the
think it
drainage,
would be wise
it's a good idea. We
just
could
call
add
out
that word.
stormwater.
Because the drainage system refers to the stormwater, but it's a stormwater drainage system.
Right, although there are also stormwater basins that are really not part of the drainage system, they're part of
I
the.
think the whole thing is, right? Because
We-
where the water
We
drains into.
define them separately and we
Okay.
talk about them separately elsewhere in the rules, so I just think if we can,
Yeah.
if town
No,
council doesn't say
definitely.
don't do that, I kind of like
I think
to
it's a good idea to include that. So
Call it
Priya,
out.
you see that? We can add
do you
stormwater.
see where it is, where I
Yes.
am.
To that, okay.
And then on page, I'm almost at the end, 54 to 55, we're mandating seeded grass plantings between sidewalks and streets.
Mhm.
Does that want to be seeded grass? This is a question for other members of the board. Does that want to be seeded grass, or does it want to be some sort of vegetation that maybe doesn't take so much water? I mean, it's consistent all the way through town right now that it's seeded grass, but oftentimes it doesn't get maintained. It gets mown, but not seeded, and kept up, and the question is, if somebody wanted to plant a little, mini wildflower garden in there, would that be okay? I mean, if the developer wanted to do that, if we wanted a dryscape of some kind there? I don't have the answer to that. I'm just curious.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
So
mean-
then we need language for that is my point.
I mean, how does a developer for like a Spring Hill, how does it even get a seeded grass plot in that space without constantly watering it? I mean, because sprinklers aren't allowed, right? So how do they
Exactly.
even do that? They manually water it with like a watering truck?
I think they don't get maintained very well.
Up until this point, irrigation has been allowed.
Right.
So wherever there has been a sidewalk, the residents' irrigation system would typically run over into the sidewalk. Not the
But
heads,
if you're a new
we told them to
subdivision-
take the heads out, but I think in other subdivisions around town, you might find that those seeded grass areas are watered by.
It's just, I think, inconsistent of us to be saying you can't have any irrigation system and then requiring a seeded grass planting.
Bria, have you seen any subdivisions, or Sam, that have those sidewalk areas with other things besides grass? Any other ideas or?
I mean, I can't speak to being a landscape architect by any means, but
Yeah.
I've heavily relied on, landscape architects to kind of dictate that using some type of no-mow grass or some sort of, as you kind of mentioned, I think was kind of a wildflower vegetation that's more, it feels more natural to me. I personally like it. So I think, removing some of that specificity does probably make sense as long as the town would like that.
That way you can work with the developer, to come up with something besides the grass when they present their landscaping plan, right?
Yeah, we just, the thing to do, thing to be sure of is that it doesn't end up just being plain, that there's that there's nothing there,
Right,
you know?
right. That is just
So
dirt.
I don't know if you guys have the ability to come up with some examples from other ordinances or something that are considering water conservation and sidewalk development, and offer us some suggestions there rather than just mandating seeded strips of grass.
Yes, we can look at that, how to frame that language.
That would be great. And I think it's not just in that one spot. I think it's other places too, probably in the street design section. And then the only other thing I have, actually I have two other things, sorry. On page 55, the very top line, which is numbered 1981 on my draft. There's a reference to the character of the neighborhood. I wonder if it could say the character of the town and the neighborhood,
Yes.
because Wenham is small enough to be one big neighborhood. So maybe we don't need that, but on the other hand, there's this references in the master plan to the town's character and so forth. So just including that, I don't know, that is something that struck me. And then the last one, and this is the last one, on page 57 in section 4.10, it's a section on protection of natural features. Can you add steep slopes and topography or steep slopes to that? So in other words, we're preserving natural features, not just of the kinds listed, but also trying to preserve significant topography or steep slopes or something like that to avoid lots of cut and fill. And that's what I had. Those were the comments I saw when I went through it.
I just wanted to bring up one more thing that the town had pointed out that they want a discussion with you, which is the dead end street provisions, section 4.1G. And the question was, should those be retained? Since Wenham has so many cul-de-sacs.
4.1, where is it? I'm
It
sorry, can
is-
you just give me this, something to look at?
What page round is that on, Sabrina?
It is 4.1G, dead end streets.
Looks like it's page 34.
34, 35?
Yeah, I see it here on 37. It could be 36, 37 on your other.
FG, dead end streets.
Yeah, so the first thing it says is dead end streets shall be discouraged. When that's basically all we get are dead end streets.
And why do we get them?
Right now, if you look at a map of Wenham, it would be very difficult to connect roadways, any like large row with any other main street because of the topography and wetlands and things. So people find large lots and then just go in, create what they can and stop. It's difficult to connect. That's
So,
why I think we get them.
but it says, it says discouraged unless justified by topography, existing conditions or other special circumstances. I mean, the thing I was thinking about is that so much of Wenham is wet
Yes, yeah.
that you can't really get from here to
Yeah.
there.
I just think that we have something in here that says that they're discouraged when we do, do we discourage them? That's just what I was wondering about with this language. I mean, it's not
So what
terrible.
would you
language.
say instead?
I don't know.
Because the
The-
idea is to be
the
preserved, right?
The
Is it-
discourage is to, and having a leeway so that if it's impossible to connect, you have cul-de-sacs, but the intention should be connectivity. But if it's not possible, then of course it's fine. That's how it reads. But if there
I
is
don't
some
think
other
we've
language,
ever- Yeah, I don't think we've ever had anyone submit an application and say, justify the dead end street. Do you know, and I don't think, I haven't heard us ever have a conversation about this section of the bylaw. That
Mhm.
said, well, why can't you connect to something?
And who raised the issue? The selects or
I'm sorry?
who raised the issue for us to look at?
No, I did.
Oh, you did,
Yes,
okay,
I
okay.
did. Only because in the time I've been here in the subdivisions that we have dealt with, I haven't heard this conversation come up, even though it seems like not a big part, but it's certainly a part of the subdivision regulations, that the board, when it was written, wanted to have connectivity, wanted to connect subdivisions. I think the big one was William Fairfield. That was a big subdivision that I think followed these subdivision regulations.
And connects to
It-
both ends and in the middle.
Yeah, it loops around
Right.
and comes like that. Whereas I don't think we've seen one since then that has been able to.
Well,
do
we
that.
tried to get it to connect through to Beverly, the Spring Hill one. Right?
We made them connect for
Yeah,
fire access only, yeah, at the
And-
gate.
I don't know that they could have connected because of the topography down the other side to.
No, that wouldn't have connected.
So I guess I'm wondering what the question is, Margaret. Are you saying that this doesn't do enough to discourage them?
No, I think my question is, for me, it's like, why are we even saying that they're discouraged?
Because they are,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Don't, I mean, other people have a different view. I mean, you would want to encourage, I could see moving little 2 to 1 and 1 to 2 here, because then it would read. And maybe even titling G, dead end streets
Yeah.
discouraged.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
And then
I see.
the positive statement of the policy, the board encourages,
Yeah.
the planning board encourages connectivity and discourages isolated streets.
that's I like that.
And
That
then
we
having,
encourage connectivity.
yeah, and then having the second one be dead end streets should be discouraged. Or maybe you shouldn't even say should be discouraged, just say must be justified
Mhm.
by topography, existing conditions or other special circumstances. And then 3 seems redundant again. Um. And I don't know about this business of dead end streets and creating frontage. I really
Yeah,
haven't thought about that.
Except where they create frontage for lots in excess of minimum requirements. We don't really consider this section usually when we're looking at.
I would love it if somebody drew for me what that even looks like.
Mhm. Yeah, so even like the next one, it should not be longer than 500 feet. And most of them, the streets themselves end up being longer than that.
Low density
Yeah.
areas, are those defined anywhere? What are low density areas? You should never pointed this out, because now I'm like reading the whole section. Whereas I kind of hopped over all the street, the technical street stuff, and was gonna say, can we have the town engineer look at that?
I think
But-
my thought is how to implement this section, you know, how do we review for this and how does the board? You know, is this information enough for the board to make a decision about a dead end street? And is it necessary?
You could add a section into the application that says like dead end street justification or something of that nature, so that it has to
Yes.
be addressed. If this is like a key thing that the town is hoping to discourage or explain, put it on the designer to actually have to address it in some fashion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Because also, I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking like, I can't think of a single dead end street in the town which I like.
Right, right.
I mean, I don't mind
Sounds
dense
very
neighborhoods.
personal.
What's that? It's very personal. I mean, the great
think-
neighborhoods of Wenham are not dead ends.
Right.
I think what we're dealing with now is a lot of infill, at least in town, and so it lends itself to dead end streets. But there may be parcels out there that we don't even know about, honestly, that may come in, and we would want to discourage a lack of connectivity. I think I think sometimes people want to live on a cul-de-sac because it's more private or because it's, less trafficked or something like that. And so it may be that developers think of this as more valuable. I don't know. But if the town, as a policy matter, would like connectivity in order to get police and fire around town and to encourage, I don't know, walking and biking from one end of town to the other, as we've discussed, then I think we should retain the policy and figure out how to say it in a little
Okay.
bit more direct way
And this
and
has,
less redundant, because as I
Yeah.
read this, it's like super redundant.
it also has specifics for the construction of the dead end streets. You know, the turnaround sizes and things like that, and then even number, was that 9, where turnaround is laid out, the areas used for the circle may not be included in the areas of the adjacent lots for the purpose of determining the conformity. That clause I don't fully understand, conformity to the minimum requirements under the zoning bylaw of the town. It does, so is that saying that a dead end street cul-de-sac doesn't qualify for frontage? I don't know, I don't quite understand that phrase, so.
Also, if you flip over the page and on page 35, there's this table where it has arterial, collector, and local and minor streets, and it talks about low density areas and high density areas, and those are supposed to be determined by the planning board. We have never done that, have we?
I think there's a definition of those. Isn't there a definition of low and high density?
This says it's to be determined by the planning board, so
Is it?
suggests that there's no. Oh, no, and here it is, you're right, it is up front.
Yeah.
An area where the lots are used for single family dwellings and they're 40,000 square feet or more in area. So that's the whole town, basically.
Yeah,
Except for a little bit in by the library. I mean, I guess I don't have the technical chops to review all these street standards. I
Right.
just don't.
right, that's.
And
what
I don't
wanted to
have-
say Too, that.
And I don't have the technical chops to say, these are 1980s versions of requirements and we're in 2026, can we modernize them? I just don't have any feel for that. So Supriya and Sam, I don't know if you've gone through these with that in mind.
We have, but that is also another section that we would really like the town engineer to take a look at to make sure that it aligns with what the town wants to see. There were a lot of discussions about turnarounds and the fire department being very specific about what it likes to see. And we have tried to incorporate that. But again, if we have more input from the department that actually deals with that, that would be helpful.
Okay.
So Priya, could I set up a meeting with Sam and our DPW director and myself at some point? To go over this, just so that, two engineering kind of guys can talk to each other. If that would be helpful.
If it's helpful for you, I'm happy to meet for sure.
I guess the policy direction would be, we'd prefer not to have airport runways in our little
Yes.
rural town.
Right.
So just trying to get the standards to be modernized and reflect the character of the town would be great. Cause I think we do hear sometimes from developers, well, yeah, it's that wide because you make me make it that wide, or it's that ugly, it looks like an airline runway because that's what your standards require.
Yeah, we've talked about different radii for different kinds of streets. That's certainly been part of the conversation throughout this process. So a lot of that should be reflected in these already and have been addressed.
I just don't know how to read it and evaluate that, so.
Yeah. If you'd like for me to sit down with somebody in DPW or town engineer,
Okay.
certainly willing to do so.
Okay, he's away this week, he'll be back, early next week, so. I will send out an email, Supriya, I'll copy you and Sam. And I'll bring Rich in, and we can sit down and talk about these, just so we get. I just wanna make sure we have something that the board can implement, that we all understand what these requirements are.
Mhm.
Great, okay. Good, all right.
Is there more, I went into my long song and dance, and I don't know if there's more to your presentation that I'm ignoring, and I don't wanna do that.
No, this was the last slide, and I think you covered almost everything that Margaret has flagged and things that we are going to be incorporating. So I'm just going to stop the presentation right here. But basically, our next step is to take everything that we discussed today, every other department comments that we have received, and everything that Margaret has flagged, and then work on the final draft of this document, and also again make sure that there's no leftover characters and typos from the PDF document, and then have the
Right.
draft in front of you with the handout, with the checklist, but also the street cross sections.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And you have the list of things that includes the nits that I saw too, that beyond what I brought up tonight, which were more
Yes.
policy type things.
Margaret forwarded your comments to me this evening.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Scott, David, you didn't have any formal comments that you wanted to submit, did you, at this point?
Not yet.
Okay.
I
Do you
assume
have
it'd
a
be a
deadline for those? Sorry, David, I just want to make sure I know when they have to be submitted. What is your timing? What's your?
I'm going to defer to Margaret to give the project. I think the grant deadline is June, and we are trying to wrap everything up as soon as possible. Our first goal was to submit this final draft in April, but I think we're looking more at mid-May at this point.
So you need comments from us in the next, by May 1st, is that
Yes, yes, please.
to be useful?
Mhm.
Okay.
I'll make sure all the departments' comments, and questions have been answered for you too, Supriya. by
Thank you,
that date.
Margaret.
Yeah. All right, and I'll contact, Rich at DPW and Sam, and we'll set something up so we can talk about this, requirements for streets. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Thank you for being here on I guess it's a Wednesday night. To stop and think with the Monday holiday.
Very good. Thank you all for your time. Nice meeting you all.
Thank you.
Did you?
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, Supriya.
So we have minutes from last time.
Let's see, I have them odd.
Thank you, Scott. And then next time we have our normally scheduled meeting, we need to vote officers because we're now all a new board. I bet Dan is away because of school vacation week,
Oh,
because
okay.
his wife is a principal.
Oh, okay.
So
So this is the red line version. Did everyone see this? Did you have a chance to look at it?
I didn't see anything that Scott didn't flag, so. Although Dan Pescarello I'm noticing right now on the screen, top line. It's Pescarello, not
Yeah.
Pescarella, right?
Yeah.
I think I said something at the beginning of the Cabot Forbes presentation, basically. Oh yeah, there I am. The chair noted the board could not, okay, good. As long as that's there, I think that's important. What is going on with the 47 Maple Street stone wall?
I knew you were gonna ask, and I sent him an email today. He has not, hasn't
anything.
gotten back to me yet.
No, anybody hasn't done anything either. I don't know what we're gonna do.
No, I went over there yesterday. He, hasn't done anything else yet. He was, he did say he was waiting for the weather to change, so. I'm not sure. Oh, wait, let me see. He
Okay.
said we're gonna be doing what we spoke about at the previous meeting and rebuilding the wall to be similar to the natural walls around Wenham, hoping to start it next month,
Next month,
which would be May. I'll keep
Okay.
on him.
so it's over the next couple of months, that is
Yeah.
kind of vague.
Sorry, but that's not what we asked him to do. We didn't ask him to build a wall that was similar to other walls in Wenham. We asked him to find rocks from the property and use those field stones to create a wall that replicated what he took down. I don't want him to be under a misapprehension and we get into a situation 2 or 3 months from now. I know we're a small town and whatnot, but Rick Woodland has been tirelessly advocating for this, and he's right, by the way. So I don't know if that needs to be a follow-up communication from you, Margaret, but I think he needs to be, and we need to clarify to him now before he gets started, he needs to reconstruct a wall with field stones from the property that resembles the wall that he took down.
It's like Margaret is typing that email right now.
I am. Yep, okay. I'll keep on them.
And then I think that, the only other thing is M. Hoffman should have a space, but that's seems silly to worry about. And whatever's at the bottom of the screen, we can't see whenever you're ready. Yeah, next meeting's adjournment, et cetera, et cetera.
In a second.
Okay. Of the guys on the screen, you were both here. Do you want to make a motion to approve these minutes?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes of the April 8th, 2026 meeting as amended or as edited.
And I will second that.
Right, all in favor? Motion is second on the floor. Weeks says aye.
Anderson, I.
Schellenberger, aye.
Okay, thank you. I think,
And Marcus?
I mean, you can vote yes, but if you were not here,
Actually, yeah, you could abstain.
you could
Because you
abstain.
weren't here.
Take a vote, man. You
If
can do
don't
it.
have to.
All right.
All right, and then so our next meeting is May
13th, I think. I'm just gonna-
13th.
Yeah, it's Wednesday, May 13th. We have the Greenbelt has applied for a hammerhead lot on the Maple Street property, 7-9 Maple Street. So
Okay.
we have that application in place and I'll send that out to you.
Okay.
Look at. They want to break off the existing house, the big house with the barn and everything.
From the
They
little
want to cut off 15 acres, but they want a 50-foot frontage. So they're creating a hammerhead
Okay.
lot.
And they have enough acreage, I'm
Oh, yeah,
sure,
they have
to do
15
that.
acres, so,
Yeah.
yeah, they only need, 180,000 or something. Yep, so May 13th.
May 13th at
7
7 PM. Do I have a motion to adjourn until May 15th? May 13th, I'm sorry, Wednesday, May 13th at 7 PM?
I will make a motion to adjourn until May 13th at 7 p.m.
Second.
All in favor? This one you get to vote on.
Anderson, I.
Weeks aye. Schellenberger aye.
Marcus?
Marcus aye.
Aye. Okay. And that is at 7.
Right eye sounds like,
15.
as opposed to left eye. It's going, how am I gonna do that? All right, that's it.
Yeah.
Your inaugural meeting. I appreciate you sitting through it, not having